All right. Hello, everyone. Final presentation of the day. So thank you all for staying throughout the entire duration and hearing what we have to say. So my name is Keisha Fuller. I am a part of the Univ 101 assessment team, and we are going to showcase our findings of piloting a learner self-assessment in a required first-year course. All right, so to give you all a little bit of overview of the UNIV program, the UNIV program is facilitated by a team of 15 full-time faculty members who collectively oversee about 150 part-time instructors who also teach UNIV 101. So the part-time team involves many educators across the University of Arizona community, including faculty members, advisors, deans, administrators, adjunct faculty, and so many other wonderful people who participate. So each full-time faculty member oversees a team of 10 to 12 part-time instructors. And so by creating this model, we are creating a team-based structure to help guide the facilitation of our UNIV courses. And so as UNIV 101 and 301 are required for graduation now, we had about close to 10,000 students enrolled in UNIV 101 this past fall. So the UNIV assessment team had a mission to design and develop an assessment plan focused on two curricular aspects. So the first one is the course learning outcomes for UNIV 101 and 301, as these are the entry and exit courses of the general education program. In addition to that, through these courses, students have the opportunity to create their e-portfolio, which is a graded assignment. So they have to create their e-portfolio to pass the class. But this provides a safe space for them to showcase their learning by providing the meaning making and the reflection of what they've learned throughout their general education curriculum. And so by assessing the general education e-portfolio, we can see the accomplishments of the general education refresh program learning outcomes. So for the sake of our presentation today, we are really going to highlight our findings from UNIV 101 specifically in assessing our learning outcomes for UNIV 101.
Hello, everybody. I'm Angelina Serratos, and I will be giving you an overview of UNIV 101 learning outcomes. So as you can see for yourself, some of the things that students should be able to do by the end of the semester is to communicate the purpose and of general education, explain the structure of general education, identify the intrinsic and extrinsic value of general education. And we're glad we're doing this, right? So many gen ed courses at the U of A. Outcomes include using an e-portfolio to document and reflect upon what students have learned to make meaning of their general education portfolio. And finally, reflect on interrelatedness of general education, academic majors and minors, academic behaviors, and general well-being. We highlighted this learning outcome number 5 because this is the one that we're attempting to assess with our assessment tool. All right, just to give you a brief overview of previous research, there have been several studies that looked at students' perceptions of the value of general education programs and so-called capstone reflective e-portfolios, and they all included an open-ended online surveys. So here we have several of those projects, one at the University of Maryland, another at the University of Buffalo, and in Singapore. The surveys that they designed, they asked questions about perceived value of learning, perceived usefulness of e-portfolios, level of desired integrative learning, and self-reflection. So this is kind of the basis of what we looked at, and most of it is focused on the e-portfolio. However, there is a reflection part that is applicable to our 101 assessment tool. I believe Amanda is going to take us further.
So now that we have set the tone or given you some background information about UNIV 101, we want to dig into the learner assessment tool that we created, which is what we were tasked with. So I want to go through our process of creating this learner assessment tool, and then we'll get into our results and then also the value of this. So in step 1, what we did is that we placed all of our learning outcomes for each week into an Excel spreadsheet. And then when we started seeing it week by week, we began seeing that there was arcs in the course. And that was also aided by the course arc map, which I'll show you in a moment. So once we had all the learning outcomes in a spreadsheet and we began seeing the arc, we then began brainstorming potential assessment questions to add in that learner assessment tool. So we each were assigned a different arc and developed those questions. And then we came back as a group, evaluated the questions that we had developed, gave each other some feedback, refined those questions a little bit more. And then once we felt like we were in a really solid place with questions that we wanted to ask our students in the course about the learning in the course, we shared it with our course directors, who then provided further feedback to us in regards to the questions that we developed before then piloting it this semester. So I mentioned a second ago a course arc map. Thank you, Ryan, for creating this. We want to just kind of show you visually the course map of UNIV 101, and you can begin seeing the arcs of it is from like week 1 to about week 4, and then the next arc is about 4 to week 8, and then 8 to about 11, and then 11 to about 15. So this map outlines the full course, and you can see the different content we cover each week. You see the major assignments in the course, and then you can see the milestones. So then from there, like I said, we identified that there were 4 arcs in the course, and therefore we piloted our learner assessment tool to be sent to students or ask students to evaluate at 4 points in the semester. So in week 4, in the first arc, we're asking them to reflect on their learning and identify the value of reflecting on their previous learning and the extent that they had done that previously and the value that would held on them as they were transitioning here to the university. In ARC 2, we asked them to assess their knowledge about the Gen Ed program. Are they able to articulate the purpose and value of the program? In ARC 3, we're asking them, so in about week 11, we're asking them about perspective taking. We're asking them the ability to see the value and purpose of perspective taking, because those couple weeks leading up to week 11 had been focusing on perspective taking. And finally, in ARC 4, we're asking them, are they able to see the connection of the general education experience to their major courses and to their future career goals? Because again, at that point, we have set time in the weeks in the curriculum to go over the connection of the gen ed experience, not only to here at U of A, but to their futures in their career and to their majors. I'm now going to pass it to John, who will talk about our preliminary results.
Okay, beautiful people. This is the hidden experience of the pilot assessment of the UNIV learning outcome number 5. So just to clarify that this is a pilot assessment, meaning that we are training the tool. We are discovering what we have to improve in the tool and how it has been received by the students. So in these preliminary findings, you will find one of the recurring questions. So we have one recurring questions in each assessment. It's the same question every single time in order to track the development or the improvement of the students' self-reflection skills. And also we have about 13 questions divided within the 4 arcs. So in this one, you have the count of the assessment. We have the categories as beginner, capable, intermediate, effective, experienced, and advanced. This is for the first part of the assessment, in which I finished it in week 4, at the end of week 4. So they started with the question of, at this point of the semester for UNIV 101, how would you rate your skill of reflection as a process of meaning making of your learning? As you can notice, most of them feel kind of intermediate, effective, I would say, effective in terms of their own reflection skills. However, I wouldn't say however, I would say that for the second arc that we have piloting, the students are more leading to an intermediate effective experience. So we can see like a progression there. So the students are feeling more confident with their reflection skills, considering that within the semester they have more or less 10, 12 reflections during each per week, and the major activities related with the e-portfolio, they have inner reflections there. So the reflection has been increasingly their own perspectives on the reflection. And in the R3 that we end last week and a half, we can see that the students have been passed from an effective perceptions of themselves in the reflections to an experienced ones. So in this arc, we have the disclosure because it's not a perfect tool yet, and we are improving this. And there are some numbers. For the arc number 1 and number 2, we have participants, I would say that 254 each. And for the last one, we have just 154. So we don't have enough numbers there, considering that for sprint semesters, we have about 1,000 students. And the worst thing is there, we say worst thing, but this is like something we discovered. We were expecting this. The lack of participation in ARC 3 was due because one of the major projects is due by the end of that term, of that ARC. So lack of participation means maybe the students were focusing on the major assignment, which is totally understandable. And the other thing is that for the sake of having continuity, we were this is an optional, highly recommended activity for the students. They don't receive any extra credit for participating because what we aim in the assessment team, and particularly with this pilot, is that the students have the agency to participate without willing nothing as a gift. So that's the thing. And this is still preliminary data. We can mention also that for the students, not every student complete sequentially all the arcs. So we don't have all the same students we start with and the same students in each arc. At least 35 of them in total, they complete the 3 arcs. So we can trace their performance or their self-perception of the reflection skills. And it has been consistent with the big one. They had been passing from intermediate, effective, and more experienced so far. So although we know all of them participated consistently, the one who did it show us that there is it's exponential, the changes. So for this, we have limitations. It's a pilot study, it's a pilot assessment we have. So for next fall, we're gonna carry out a better, an improved tool. And for this one, consistent participation is one of the limitations. And we don't want to offer them extra credit for participating on this. We want this to be a critical aspect of themselves in their commitment with their own learning. It's a learner self-assessment. So it should be by them, for them. And we discovered the scheduling conflict with the major assignments and also the spring break. We didn't notice for them when we were planning this. And also, there are not many questions, but there is the survey fatigue there. They have 4 questions, more or less, per arc, and still the students may feel like overwhelmed, some of them, and the technical issues of a qualitrix form that can happen. And finally, the survey responses that we are gonna compare them with the assignments alignment, because as we may know, the students, they have a better self-perception of themselves, a better self-perception of themselves than they do in their assignments. So we want to compare the data we have about the self-learning assessment, the recurring question, and other questions within their products. So to see if what they are telling us is, we can evidentiate it within their productions. So again, these findings are preliminary. We are still working on improving the tool, and we can say that we have seen a change on this. The recurring question has been working, and it has showed that the students are constantly growing during the semester and during the arcs at least. We will see what we have for R4. So I think that's all for this part, and I will pass to Kisha again. Thank you.
All righty. So, some suggestions for future applications. So, as we create learning outcomes in our classes, we never really take the time to assess if students are actually meeting these learning outcomes. So, student perceptions on their achievement of these learning outcomes may actually differ than what we as instructors would assess, right? And so, by creating a learner self assessment, this will allow instructors to determine if their course learning outcomes are being met. And so we highly consider that you all apply a learner self-assessment in your future courses. And that is all that we have for you all. We do have a list of all of our committee members for the unit of assessment team, along with their corresponding emails. And we'll open it up for questions. Thank you.
My question is more of a devil's advocate. So in our experience, when we have extra surveys and stuff, it's usually the better students, the more, on top of it. What are you doing to compensate for that, and knowing that you're just getting, that top, or at least that a certain percentage of response?
That's a really good question.
Well, and that's why we piloted to start off to see what are we getting. And we were talking about the limitations of it. So that's something we definitely want to address if we're going to continue it and pilot it, not just pilot it, but have it in the course across all sections. So this spring was only because it was all of us as a core faculty who are teaching, so we can manage that a little bit more. And now we want to think about, okay, now that we've piloted, we see how it went, we see we need to make changes of when we're offering or when we're asking students to complete it, because we see the survey fatigue. So now we need to then assess, going to your point, how do we also encourage students across the board and not just the top tier students?
So it looked like you have over 13, 14 questions. Is that correct?
Over the semester.
And you focused on one question to get the quantitative data. Is that correct?
One reoccurring question.
One reoccurring question.
Correct.
Okay. And then it also looked like there were certain students, there were only 55 out of the 1,000 students that did all three.
Correct.
Okay, super. And so did you have to use math in order to get some results?
John.
Yes, we need some math, of course. Of course, the thing is that here we cannot make generalizations. We don't have enough students. The students participating is a quarter of the 1,000, and the really that are engaged with this is 37 of them. So it's like, we would say like not even 10% of the student population we have during spring. So what we are planning, considering the limitation, is how to engage for fall more students in this practice, because we have, I think that the recurring question is the one that is numeric somehow, and we have also a Likert scale one too that we haven't shown here because we have a lot of data and it's dirty data still. We have to clean it up, and the idea is to engage them and make some generalization according to what we have from them.
So I've taught 101. I was one of the guinea pig instructors that first spring.
Thank you for support.
I think this is awesome. First of all, you guys have done a great job. And I'm just thinking about, because I'm teaching again this fall, I assume you just put the questions in D2L and said, please fill out the survey.
Okay, yes and not. Because of anonymity of the student, we create a qualitative form, and it's up to them to complete it. And the only thing we are asking there is tell us who is your instructor and your email.
Okay.
So we can connect their responses with their products at the end of the semester.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. The instructors, they don't get.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I have a couple suggestions, and maybe they're too, strict or whatever, but could you potentially make at least your repeat question, the one that you ask several times, attached to them turning in one of their assignments, so that when they turn their assignment in, they answer the question and they submit their assignment? Okay, that would be one thing. Do it the old-fashioned way, and maybe this is something else that could be piloted with just a few faculty, is the faculty member hands a survey out in class, has a student collect them up, put them in a sealed envelope, and drop them off. I mean, it's old-fashioned, it's old school, but maybe that's a way of getting your anonymous data by class. Granted, you'd need somebody to be the, put all the data into the computer, but it's a means to an end to get some really good numbers to look at results. but just my suggestion being, knowing how the class flows, I think the arcs are awesome. And it really could give all of us who teach the class some really, really good feedback.
Absolutely.
So I'm going to piggyback on what Elaine said. So if anybody else has a question, I'll get you in a second. But I'm thinking back to Maddie's presentation where she talked about assessment for learning. And I'm thinking these students, you're coming into 101. Now, I've not taught 101, but I will this fall.
Oh,
but yeah, I'm very excited. But I'm wondering, they're going to go through their career at the university and we're going to keep collecting assessment data. We're going to do student surveys like Becky. I'm wondering if you couldn't position assessment for learning somewhere in the curriculum so that they wanted didn't have to, but they actually saw the benefit of participating in this. That's just a comment.
No, that's a wonderful comment, and that belongs to the curriculum team we have because we are the assessment curriculum. All of us. Yeah.
Yeah, so Unit 101 is just the foundation prior to going into 301. And so 301, we can see we can gather a lot of data just from the e-portfolio itself. And so I know that's when we're coming up with questions, it was a little difficult because we're already asking that in the reflections. And so I think that was one of our limitations is now we have to compare these results to actually what they are demonstrating within their assignments. And so I definitely just wanted to add that little tidbit.
Okay, I have a small question, but I was really interested looking at those options you gave them for the one question that went across the three. When you gave them this question and when you gave them the answers, did you define what each of those meant? What does really advanced mean? What does beginner mean when it comes to reflection? Just to make it a little easier for them when they're taking the survey to not have to sit there and figure it out for themselves.
I like that. I am going to pass it over to John with this. But I also think it goes into perspective taking a little bit. And we definitely did not specify that.
We didn't because, as a matter of example, I was participating in the critical thinking group committee from the TRIO University. And we were come to the question, okay, what is critical thinking? How we're going to assess it? What is the rubric we're going to use for everything to make it consistency? Because if we're going to reduce the experience they have in reflection, just for the academics, it's just seeing a part of the crystal here. So we couldn't say, this is reflection in such a way, just in academic terms, we could not say that. So that's why we didn't reduce this is the meaning of an experienced person who reflects. We couldn't say that. We cannot measure that yet. Or at least we don't have the tools or the rubrics to assess it, but it would be a great idea to give them, look, this is the definition of an experienced person who reflects. But that's a great question.
Thank you. And maybe if it wouldn't cause more survey fatigue, I'd say maybe just ask them, what do you mean when you say you're at this level? But then they have to write a bunch of stuff and nobody wants to do that.
Yes.
We did have that question. And then we were like, oh, we are asking too many questions. So
Yes.
based on iteration, we originally were thinking, we debated on using the advanced, beginner, et cetera. And then we're like, okay, but then let's ask them because we are debating it. And then we're like, okay, but now there's too many questions. So it's a lot of back and forth, but it is helpful for us to hear this other perspective and consider ways that we continue to refine it, which is why we want to pilot it. So we can see, okay, maybe we do need to ask that question and maybe another question needs to be removed.
I'm also excited to see the data and our findings for 301 because we haven't assessed anything from 301 yet. And so I believe that is coming this fall, potentially a pilot for 301 to kind of see that continuity of data as well.
Thank you. Any other question? All right. That's all.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much. Thank you.